Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Final Fantasy VII RE-CAST. The Final Fantasy VII RE-CAST is a podcast dedicated to the Final Fantasy VII Remake universe. We're beginning this show with just under a month until the release of Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. In the inaugural episode of the show, we'll begin recapping the story of the original Crisis Core on PlayStation Portable, discuss how it fits into the original story of the original Final Fantasy VII, as well as how we think Reunion might be different from a gameplay perspective. As we draw closer to the release of Reunion, we'll start diving into our theories of how the story may change and how those changes may relate to Final Fantasy VII Remake and subsequently Rebirth. Let's get...
Hello, Ryan.
Yes, hello, Johnny boy. Yes, sir. How are we doing today? How are you feeling? I'm glad that you decided to undertake this with me because, man, we can go all day about Final Fantasy, and I literally wouldn't ask anyone else to do this with me, so thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure, dude. I feel like every time we're on the phone, Final Fantasy VII comes up. It does. Like, I live in LA now. You're back on the East Coast. Doesn't matter. No matter where we are in the world, it always happens. Always.
Yeah. So just to, I guess, to give the people who might be unfamiliar with ourselves, my name is, I go by Uchi, but you know what? We go by our governments here because we're like this. Okay.
We do.
We're like this, but that's totally okay. A lot of you that are maybe watching us that know who we are, y'all might be familiar with some of my work with the anime community. I do a lot of reactions for Dragon Ball. I've done some for Pokemon. Lots of different reactions in general, but I'm kind of all over the place as far as where my projects are. I have a channel for anime reactions and reactions. I have another channel for where I do all of my video game content, which is where this is being hosted on, as well as the Full Power Podcast and Power Rangers Academia. So that's just a few things that I'm involved in. I'm not gonna list all the laundry list of things that I'm doing because I want y'all to hear what my man's is up to as well. So Johnny, please tell us what are you bringing to the table?
Yeah, so my name is John, but I mostly go by my alias Sweet Johnny Cage. I have a YouTube channel where I create guides and walkthroughs for all sorts of games, ranging from Metroid to Dark Souls to Elden Ring to Final Fantasy VII Remake. I did guides for that. Making guides is a big passion of mine, but Final Fantasy VII is also another big passion of mine, so that's why we're here. Yeah, I've been on YouTube since 2008, which is how Ryan and I met. I used to work on a channel for a mom and pop game store in New York, and he was in our comments all the time and in our live streams back before Twitch was a thing, so we met through there, and like that's how we became friends. And that was 14 years ago, 14 plus years ago now.
Shout out to us.
You were a literal child.
I seriously was. Literally. There's no other way to even word that. Like, I'll never forget those streams. It was because of where you were working at and what you were reviewing is essentially kind of what upstarted my whole YouTube and content creation lifestyle. And basically, full circle, but we're gonna keep circling because now we're finally here doing this together now. But yeah,
now we're circling the drain.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Yes. Yeah.
We're dying. Cool. So you want to give a little bit of history, or give a little bit of your history with Final Fantasy VII, and then I'll do the same.
Yeah, so that's perfectly fine with me. So pretty much my history is kind of short-lived in comparisons to what I'm sure Johnny's gonna tell you, because like there's a reason why this recast is gonna work so well, and that's simply because the dynamic between the two of us is like this. Okay, it's like my experience with Final Fantasy as a whole is ultimately super limited. I played the original game on PlayStation 1 way later, way after the fact, as far as like, release time. I probably played Final Fantasy VII by the time I was in high school. So this is probably like 2011, 2012 for me. And I never beat it. Gonna go and full disclosure, full transparency, I'm a real one. Okay, no reason to lie. And from what I did play, I enjoyed it. But this Mr. Man over here over the years been trying to get me to just finish. So I'd pretty much like rebought it a bunch of times. Like whenever it was like on PSP, I got it there. When it was on like PS3, I got it there. I don't know if I got the PS4 one because by that point I got it on Switch. So the Switch file, my Switch file has the most progression. I'm way out of Midgar, past the Golden Saucer. All right, gotta throw that in there.
That Easter egg is my Long Island accent attempting to say gold saucer.
Yeah, so you're getting Easter eggs within the Easter eggs here. And of course, obviously, I watched the hell out of Advent Children. Unfortunately for me, I've never played Crisis Core, so that's part of the reason why I'm really looking forward to even just doing this podcast, in addition to obviously playing Reunion when that drops. But I have taken the liberty in, because, limited time and adulting and all that, fun stuff. I've at least made the attempts to go ahead and watch all the cutscenes that, YouTubers have put out there for years. And
yeah, they've been out a while.
Yeah, so I'm just making my way through the original Crisis Core cutscenes to get the story from there. But obviously, I played Remake, and that game was a masterpiece. I wouldn't change a thing. 10 out of 10. We've actually talked about this before on, like, you could call the prequel to the recast, right? We did an episode after we both had finished our Remake playthroughs in 2020, and that was a fun time. I had a 27-hour impromptu stream just to beat it out.
That's nuts.
And honestly,
that's insane.
I can't ever see, because when I say I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, nah, I can't. And luckily it was during the pandemic, so I didn't have I got laid off already, so I didn't have to worry about work. So like the timing.
The start of the pandemic.
Yep.
April 2020, like April 2020.
Yeah, well, that was right when things were getting crazy, I'm sure you're gonna tell your story.
Dude, Square put out a notice that you may not be able to get Remake physical. Like, they suggested you buy it digital.
Yeah. Luckily for me, I was gifted to me digitally back then. But yeah, Remake, just to close out so I could let Johnny talk, changed my life. Because that game, as someone who admittedly never finished the original, but got far enough to where I played that portion of the original through Remake, and I noticed all the differences, which of course we're gonna talk about here throughout these episodes. It just got me way more hyped than when I went in, and I did not expect the outcome to make me feel the things that I felt. And I'm and Johnny and I talk about this all the time, man, I don't understand how people can give this series gripe. There's a reason why 7 is getting all of the treatment and love that it has been owed for so many years at this point. We're getting so much 7 content now for all the lost time. But that's pretty much my history. Johnny, please take it away. And I hope you insert the story about how when you got Remake, because that story's OD.
Sure. So I did not play 7 the day it came out. I think I played it the summer after. So it was the summer of 98 that I played it. I grew up a Nintendo kid. I did not get a PlayStation until the summer of 98 for my birthday with Final Fantasy VII, because I remember clear as day going to the Roosevelt Field Mall on Long Island with my best friend in 4th grade. And it was around February of 98, I think, at that point. Or maybe it was closer to no, it was definitely closer to June. It was the start of the summer. And we were in Electronics Boutique, and he was trying to decide between getting Vagrant Story, which was another Square Enix or Squaresoft RPG that had come out around that time.
Nice.
Or Final Fantasy VII. And the reason we decided on Final Fantasy VII was because it had 3 discs, and we had never heard of something like that before. Yep. A multi-disc game was unheard of to us. So we got that. We played it for a while. We got stuck in going between Sector 5 and Wall Market after, I think, a few days because we could not figure out to climb up a pipe because of the pre-rendered backgrounds. It didn't look right. It was not obvious. But then we got through Wall Market. We got, we got through some stuff, and then that took us a few weeks. And then my birthday was coming around, and my mom asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I was like, what if we combine like my birthday with Christmas? Could you get me a PlayStation with Final Fantasy VII? Because I'm really loving this game. And she was a great gift giver. And she just got me a PlayStation. Like, she was like, okay, let's go to the mall. And like, I got a PlayStation, got Final Fantasy VII. And within like 4 or 5 hours, I called my friend Mike. I was like, I'm real sorry, but I'm going past where we stopped. Like, I can't stop and wait for you. You can come over, but like, I've got to keep going. And so of course I played it to completion from there. And so that was like 98, 99. And then, as a kid, like, you don't have a lot of games, so you just end up replaying the same stuff over and over.
Yep.
And so I played 7 a bunch. And then, years go by, the PlayStation 2 comes out. Love Final Fantasy X. I didn't really play 11, but I had friends who played 11. I didn't like 12. And then when the PS3 was rolling around, they announced the tech demo showcasing the power of the cell processor and, the power of the PlayStation 3. And they used Final Fantasy VII's intro cutscene as this tech demo and sort of screwed themselves into people demanding a remake for 10 plus years. That was 2004, I think, because the PS3 came out in 05. Or
it was like
no,
06.
PlayStation 3 came out in 06. Yeah, November 11, 2006, I think it was. The Xbox 360 came out in 05. But so they just screwed themselves for so long. And then, the whole story of 7 Remake. But so when 7 Remake comes out, the story that Ryan was referring to was, this was the start of COVID. Square had put out a message a couple weeks or a week before the game was coming out, strongly suggesting that people buy it digitally because stores may not get the physical version in time because stores were just closed. Businesses were going out of business. Supply chain is still a mess in 2022, and we're supposed to be post-COVID now. Right. It was just like unlikely that you could get it in time, including the first class edition that they sold on SquareEnix.com that I bought. So I didn't get that until like a few days later. But a store in Queens, New York, I was living in New Jersey at the time, just across the river from Manhattan. A store in Queens got it, and I called them. They were like, yeah, you can come in, just like bring a mask. And so I drove from my apartment in New Jersey to the store in Flushing, Queens, like a mom and pop game store. And I got over the bridge and into Queens within 20 minutes. And there was no one on the road. It was like 28 days later. And as I was driving through Flushing, Queens, for those of you who've never been to Flushing, Queens or been to like Metro New York, it's a neighborhood, but it's very urban. Like, there's not a lot of grass. There's not a ton of trees. There's sidewalks and everything, but it's just a lot of roads, a lot of cars. And of course, it was like a gray, dismal day of April. And there was a line wrapped around the CVS of people trying to get like toilet paper. Like, it was the height of the pandemic. And when I went into the store, they wouldn't even let me in. They like came and got my credit card from, I was standing at the door. They came and got my credit card, came back, gave me the copy of the game, and then I played it. With Crisis Core specifically, though, I did play it when it first came out on PSP. It's the first game, I'm not sure if it's the only game, but it is the first game that I ever cried at. And like, I'm a big softie. Like, I fully own that.
Me too.
Yeah. And how Crisis Core is going to end. Like,
yeah,
this is a spoiler podcast. Like, we are not holding back here. There's no point.
All right.
If you have not played Crisis Core before, don't watch this.
Dude, and I'm on the
we
podcast.
Actually do not want you to watch this. Yeah. So you've been warned, but Crisis Core ends with the main character dying.
Right.
And that's how it's going to end from the jump, because you learn about this in the original Final Fantasy VII through a secret cutscene. So Crisis Core is based off of a secret cutscene, along with a it's called a quest within the base game where Cloud rebuilds his memories, realizes that he has this guy Zack's memories in his head due to experiments that were done on him, but ultimately Zack dies trying to rescue Cloud. And so now you're playing as this dude Zack. You know how it's going to end. And I remember it was 2008. I had gone to Disneyland in California with my then girlfriend, and we were on the plane ride back. We flew out of Long Beach Airport in Southern California, flying back to New York City, and I was on this plane bawling.
Oh my God.
At the final cutscene of this game. And it was crazy because I knew it was coming. But the way they did it was so extra that it just like, not extra in a cheesy way, but it's like they really, like they knew everyone knew it was coming.
Right.
So they were like, fuck it, let's do it. Let's do it for real. You know, let's not just have him die. Let's have him like say some profound shit. Let's have him like be bloody and bullet ridden. Like let's really lean into this. And so Crisis Core has had a huge impact on me. And not that I was like looking for a remake, but I was really hoping that the game wouldn't always be stuck on PSP because it was never released on Vita.
Yeah.
It was never released digitally on the PlayStation Store for PSP or Vita. It has been quite literally stuck on the UMD disc, or the UMD, I guess the D in UMD stands for disc, but it's been stuck on UMD for 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very glad that Reunion is coming, but as we tie it in, as we try to figure out how it's going to tie into Final Fantasy VII Remake, which we now understand is likely a different universe, and more of like a remake sequel or a requel. How Reunion is going to tie into that and how Reunion is going to change is really, really exciting to me. And I know it's exciting to you, Ryan.
100%. Why we had to do this. So the people could feel our excitement and our anticipation. And I'm sure there's plenty of other folks out there. So, you know, it's a nice time to, I guess, connect with other fellow like-minded Final Fantasy VII enthusiasts like us. So, but you know, in relation, or you know, going into obviously what we're gonna be doing here on this recast is recapping, of course, the story of Crisis Core, and then we're gonna be talking about how it fits into the original story and possible remake tie-ins, and then as well as gameplay differences. So, Johnny, you being the complete expert here and someone who has literally had that moment, because honestly, like we'll get to it with like our thoughts.
I hope it happens.
Yeah.
All I'll say is I hope it happens and they don't change it.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Because that moment needs to be felt by more people.
Yeah. So go ahead, take it away with the portion of the recap. Now, just keep in mind, guys, we're not giving the entire game, you know, because you know this episode would be like super long. Obviously, if we told the entire game in one episode. So if you're not, we're gonna have some nice separation among the topics. So take it away. What do we got with this first part of Crisis Core?
Yeah, so we'll call this like, I'd say it's like the first third of the game. Keep in mind that this was a PlayStation portable game, so it was meant to be not exactly mission-based, but the quests of the game weren't meant to be super long. They were quite long for a portable game, but it had to be a condensed adventure. So there is a decent amount of filler going on, unfortunately, and I'm hoping that kind of gets taken care of in Reunion, but it does move kind of quickly when you just look at it from a story perspective, because there's like quick beats that are just sort of like drawn out missions. That's kind of the way to think about it. But cool. So starting off, the Crisis Core starts off basically the exact same as Final Fantasy VII, and this is with the bombing run. So the game starts off with almost an identical cutscene, but now it's Zack on top of the train instead of Cloud. And they're not going there to blow up a reactor, but they're going there to fend off Wutai troops. So we learn that this game is set during the war, towards the end of the war, of Shinra versus Wutai. And I was really glad in Final Fantasy VII Remake that this was spoken about, because it's only alluded to in the original game. Like, we know that there's animosity between Wutai and Shinra, and we know that there was a war, but we never really talk about it in the base game. But it is heavily talked about in Remake, especially integrated with the Yuffie DLC. So we kind of get a taste of this. And speaking of Yuffie, we do meet her. It's a little Easter egg. She's not like an important character or anything, but she just shows up a little later on. So Zack is on top of the train going into the Sector 1 reactor, or maybe it's Sector 0, doesn't matter, fending off Wutai troops disguised as Shinra soldiers. And then the battle sort of spills out into the streets. He's chasing the army away. And then mysteriously, Sephiroth shows up. And Zack's superior, so Zack is a soldier 2nd class, training to be a soldier 1st class. This guy, Angeal, who is Zack's superior and soldier 1st class, shows up and saves him from Sephiroth attacking him. But then we learn that it's actually a VR mission. It's VR training. And Sephiroth was part of the VR. He wasn't really in the mission. And since you are playing as a Shinra employee, as a soldier, it seems to be confusing to both Zack and Angeal that Sephiroth showed up at all, especially as like an antagonist. Right. It's not really explored why that happens, but if you go back and watch it, they both seem a little bit surprised, but it's never talked about. So I am hoping that they do get to it in Reunion, or at least flesh that out, or maybe even just take it out. So the training mission ends. We realize it's VR. And a little Easter egg is that the VR goggles that Zack is wearing are very similar to the VR goggles that Cloud wears in Remake. So they kind of bring that technology forward, even though it wasn't mentioned or really ever shown in the original 7. So like Cloud wears like an upgraded 5 or 6 years later kind of version of it, but it's the same kind of headset. Cool. So training mission ends, and then Angeal and Zack have to go to Wutai on a mission that is supposed to end the war. And this is where we're introduced to Lazard, who is the leader or the director of the soldier division or soldier program within Shinra. He is the one who dishes out the missions, and he sends Angeal and Zack to Wutai to do some covert stuff to help end the war. When they're in Wutai, Zack runs into Yuffie, again, just as an Easter egg, but she claims to be like the fiercest soldier in all of Wutai.
Yeah, I love Yuffie.
And it seemed like that's how they built her personality in Integrate in the remake. They kind of added into that. And again, with Sonon in Integrate in the remake, he talks a lot about the war between Shinra and Wutai and how his sister was killed. So they're really building this in and fleshing out the world, and I'm really excited, again, to see how Crisis Core Reunion adds to that even more. Maybe Sonon will show up in Reunion, right? Like, maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, I didn't think of that, but see, there you go. There you go.
Here we go, baby.
That's good. Ding, put it right on there.
Yeah. I know you got the soundboard ready.
Oh, I got you. There it is.
There you go. Cool. So then the mission is a success. They're escaping. Angeal and Zack are escaping, but then they're ambushed by mysterious soldiers, and after they defeat them, Angeal remarks that they are copies of Genesis. Genesis is then told to be a missing soldier 1st class. So that's kind of the reason that they go to Wutai, is to like try to find Genesis, who went missing on a mission. That's sort of like the other angle of this mission, but they're attacked by what are essentially clones of Genesis. They call them copies, but they're basically clones. It confuses everybody. And then they're ambushed again, but this time Lazard is around. Angeal tells Zack, take Lazard, get him back to HQ. I'll deal with things here. That happens, but then Angeal goes missing. He never returns from Wutai. So things are a little sketchy. So after that, some time goes by, and then Lazard enlists Zack on another mission, this time to investigate the hometown of Genesis and see if they can learn anything about his whereabouts. Maybe he's there. Maybe people there know where he might be. And this is where we're introduced to Sung from the Turks, who plays a huge role in Final Fantasy VII. This is kind of where we get our first taste of him. Although he was, I believe, also part of Before Crisis, which was a mobile-only game in Japan. I think it's been released on Steam in recent years. I've never played it. But that's like a Turk-focused game.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
with like Reno and the bald dude.
Yeah, and like a couple of unique characters to that game that don't crossover. But yeah, we're introduced to Sung, who's sort of like the leader of the Turks. And then they go to this town called Benora. And Benora plays a huge role in Crisis Core. It's sort of where it starts and ends. And in Benora, we learned that this is also where Angeal is from. And Angeal sort of alluded to the fact that when he was a kid, he was poor, his best friend was rich. It turns out that Angeal grew up in this town as a poor kid, and Genesis was the son of wealthy landowners. So that's the tie-in between the two. They were childhood best friends, both rose through the ranks of Shinra's army and became soldier first class. So one of Zack's first stops is a house belonging to Angeal, and he meets Angeal's mother, Jillian. Jillian says that Genesis had been around. She doesn't really talk about Angeal too much, but she does say that, that's her son. And then Zack tells her, like, you got to leave. You got to run, which is sort of like a bit of like a dereliction of duty. Like, Zack, what he should have done as a soldier is like tell Sung, like, hey, like I found Angeal's mother. Come here. Let's question her. But instead he tells her, you got to bounce. You got to hide. So it really shows that Zack is a much more softer person than the Shinra soldiers that we know from Final Fantasy VII and Remake. He's a bit of a unique character in that sense. He's also kind of dumb.
Yes.
Just putting that out there.
Yes, he is. Oh my
Crisis
God.
Core is, again, it's like a portable game. It's supposed to be a little lighthearted. I'm hoping they do something about that in Reunion, because now it's like a full-fledged PlayStation 4 game, PlayStation 5 game. But
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah,
it's a little slapsticky sometimes. But in any event, Zack tells Angeal's mom to bounce, and then he goes on to, he gets a call from Sung, and they start investigating an apple juice factory, which I think is what it is. They talk about dumb apples that grow in Benora, and the reason they call them dumb is because they grow at random times.
Random times,
so,
yep, I remember that.
Yeah. So that's sort of the story there, and believe it or not, like dumb apples, they're not like a huge part of the story, but Genesis constantly refers to them. And he always has one on him, which is like his calling card almost. Like when they're in Wutai, they see a dumb apple, and then Angeal's like, I think Genesis was here. So it's always a call to Genesis. So they investigate this apple juice facility or whatever it is, and then they kind of get attacked, I believe by Genesis, and then they kind of get split up. Zack goes back to Jillian's home to find her dead. And Angeal is basically just like standing over her corpse in the doorway. Zack assumes that Angeal killed her, says, what happened to your honor, this and that. Angeal doesn't do much to fight back. Instead, he just runs. And he flies away. I think he shows his wing at this point, right?
I want to say yes, but from what I remember through what I've been watching was that he was missing for a little bit, and then like the next time we see him, his whole demeanor like changed. So I'm thinking maybe, but I don't remember this part too well. I was funny enough, I remember all of the not so important things, like Zack being a dummy and literally like losing all those potions to that kid, and he just kept saying, oh, he's right behind you, oh, he's right behind you, oh, he's right behind you. Okay. I'm like, what are you doing?
I just watched it again. So Genesis, Angeal does not reveal his wing. Genesis reveals his wing at this point.
Okay, yeah.
So Angeal just bounces. Genesis trips Zack. It's very like slapsticky. Like he literally sticks his foot out as Zack is running. Zack trips over him. For some reason, can't get up and chase after Angeal. It's very bizarre. I hope they handle it better in Reunion.
Yeah,
and
like,
then
you're a class B soldier or whatever. Like
falling for the oldest trick in the book.
That happens.
And so Genesis summons Bahamut, I believe. And then Zack has to fight Bahamut. So that's how summons work in this game. It's like somebody has to summon them, you defeat them, and then you're able to summon them. Mm-hmm. So Angeal disappears. Genesis flies away with his one wing. And then, which I found shocking at the time, you kind of get a sense of what the Turks are for. And that's because a helicopter comes to pick you up, and then they bomb the shit out of Benora. They raze the place. And so you literally see a dumb apple tree melting, and it's sort of signifying like they only grow here. They ain't growing here anymore. Wow. And so like any remaining villagers would have been killed. It's just blown off the face of the map. and then you kind of get a sense of like, this is what the Turks do. Like, this is standard operating procedure for them. They get information and then they destroy it. Cool. So some time goes by, and then one thing I did want to talk about is that when you meet Genesis, he's constantly quoting the play Loveless, which to me, again, like how they extrapolated a story into Crisis Core is like kind of ridiculous, because Loveless was literally a poster in the base game of Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, wow.
That's all it was.
I didn't
It was a
even know.
poster. Yeah, you see it. Just watch the opening cutscene of 7. You will see a poster for Loveless. And it's like, it says like Loveless, now playing at the theater or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. So
and then
nice
they wrote a play. Yeah, they like wrote a play into Crisis Core. Like it's that the whole story of Crisis Core is Loveless. Like it's this epic poem or whatever, and they wrote the poem, turned it into a game.
That's funny.
It's crazy. So you learn about Loveless, which is just sort of supposed to like tie into 7. But anyway, Zack and Sun go back to Midgar after the Benora bombing, and then while attempting to return to Midgar, you get a report on your cell phone. You're constantly getting emails in this game. I hope they do away with this in Reunion, because it was like 2007, 2008, and it's like, hey, email. Everybody's got email now. Put email in the fucking game. Like that's how it felt. So I'm hoping they tone it down a little bit. And a lot of the emails are dumb. It's like, like infantrymen saying like, hey, Zack, how you doing? And you can't even respond to them. It's like one-way email. It's ridiculous.
It's probably going to be text messages now or something.
I pray to God it is.
Yeah.
So you get a report that Genesis has attacked Shinra HQ. So you kind of got to fight through the streets, fight on the highway, take out some Genesis copies, take out some monsters. And then as that's going on, you meet a Turk. You meet the Turks, you meet Reno and Rude, but then you also meet another Turk named Cisne. This is a woman Turk who only appears in this game. Again, I'm not sure if she appears in Before Crisis. She definitely does not appear in Base 7. She has not yet appeared in 7 Remake. Maybe she shows up in Rebirth. It felt a little strange because there was Elena in 7, but it is when you first meet Elena, she basically says like it's her first day on the job. But yeah, it's a little unclear like why Cisne's here. As far as like story and plot go, she is a very important character, especially towards the end of the game. But she just never shows up again. It's kind of weird. Anyway, runs into them, meets her, and then during that fight, or a little bit afterwards, Zack gets a call from Sephiroth on his cell phone, and Sephiroth says Angeal has been spotted in Mako Reactor 5. And as somebody who's played Final Fantasy VII, Mako Reactor 5 is a very important place. In Base 7, that's where you fight Airbuster. That's when you learn that President Shinra has no idea who you are, even though you claim to be a soldier first class. A lot happens in Mako Reactor 5, and at the end of Mako Reactor 5 and 7, something else happens. You meet someone right afterward. So there's kind of like a similar vibe going here. You're revisiting these locations in Crisis Core that you had visited already in 7. So as you're investigating Mako Reactor 5 with Sephiroth, you find a lab belonging to a missing Shinra scientist named Dr. Hollander. Again, another character unique to Crisis Core, never shows up again in 7. Maybe they tie him into Rebirth, we'll see. While you're there, you're reading his emails, you're reading files on a computer about something called Genova Project G, which created both Genesis and Angeal, but was ultimately deemed a failure. And so Zack and Sephiroth, they both assume that G stands for Genesis, and Sephiroth says that Genesis is suffering from degradation, and you can tell this, like, the more you run into Genesis over the game, his, like, hair starts turning gray, he gets a little bit more sallow and pale, but also his clothes start turning gray. I don't get that. Like, are his clothes part of him? It's very dumb. But he sort of explains that, and he says that he's slowly dying because of, and I'm quoting the Final Fantasy fandom wiki for the sentence, but he's slowly dying because of his, quote, tainted birth. And we learn more about that later on in the game. We'll definitely discuss that in episode 2, but we know that something went wrong or something was weird about the way Genesis was born, and likely Angeal as well.
Right.
So Hollander shows up, says, Sephiroth, I thought I'd find you here. And they start talking. Sephiroth says, we need to bring you in. But then Genesis intervenes. Hollander runs. Sephiroth tells Zack to chase after him. He'll take care of things here. And then while chasing Hollander, throughout the reactor, Angeal shows up and wants to fight Zack. And because these two are so close, Zack does not want to fight. Just sort of like fends off his attacks. He's just like not really defending himself, just deflecting.
Right.
Angeal gets pissed, says, you need to defend yourself. Zack's like, no, I'm not going to fight you. And then Angeal hits the ground with like a spell or something, breaks the floor beneath Zack. Zack falls down somewhere through Mako Reactor 5, and then has a sort of a dream that he's talking to his mother, and then wakes up to a woman or a young girl in a church in Sector 5 slums. She introduces herself as Aerith, and the relationship begins.
There it is.
And so we'll end the recap here. It's a pretty good place to break, but this is how their friendship starts, and ultimately their relationship goes on throughout the game. But yeah, so that's sort of the intro of Crisis Core. That's how the game opens up, and that's why I said like this is probably like the first third. This does take a little while. Like this takes several hours, like 7 or 8 hours to actually happen because of the way the game is structured. But that's it. That's the recap so far. So I guess we could talk now about how this fits into the original story, although we sort of alluded to that as I was recapping.
Right, yeah.
But also possible reunion tie-ins and ultimately Final Fantasy VII Remake tie-ins. So what are your thoughts, my dude?
Well, so far, and the funny part is, I've at least seen this much cutscene wise through my watch through, right?
Right.
Well,
I've been rewatching all that alongside you, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
I have not played this since I finished it on that airplane, crying my eyes out in 2008.
Oh man, but yeah. So far it's obviously with this much of the game, there's a lot of questions that I'm sure a lot of folks like myself are gonna have, like, especially with mannerisms, because we at this point we kind of get an idea of why these guys are acting the way they do, but then we still want to know more about Sephiroth, obviously, right? Especially with how random his involvement in that VR training session went, because he kind of just shows up and I feel like in a way the game directors, the devs, they might have wanted to throw him in there just to kind of surprise the player in a way, kind of like similar to in Remake when you fight Sephiroth, when you do, like at the end of the remake, and I'm like, this didn't happen in the original.
So that's not where I thought you were going to go.
Okay, well, go ahead, take it over.
In Remake, after you bomb Sector 1 reactor and you're escaping through the streets, Sephiroth shows up.
Right, yes. That part's still there. But it's like...
Now, is that a Crisis Core nod? Or is that something totally unrelated?
Oh, see, I don't know. Because that's the mystery now. Where it's like...
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because before this remake universe even, came to be, all we as fans could work off of is the original 7, Crisis Core, Advent Children, and I guess you could throw in Dirge of Cerberus, because that obviously...
Yeah, and before Crisis.
Right?
There was also the OVA, the OVA.
Yeah, so, and I was also going to throw in, whatever, in-betweener kind of projects that existed that play some sort of canonical role in all of this. And from all those things, you kind of, make sense of what you can with what they gave us. But now with all of this remake stuff, it makes you second guess, dude, was this intentional for other reasons? Was this always meant to be with how they're doing things in Remake? With, this Sephiroth now seems like he's not the same Sephiroth that you'd expect him to be, So there's a lot of interesting levels to this. And and you know, it
Yeah.
just makes you wonder.
So it was called Last Order. The Last Order Final Fantasy VII was the original video animation.
That okay,
That's
that does ring a
yeah.
bell. I don't know if I've seen it, but yeah, I recognize.
Yeah, I think it might have been Japan only. The whole release around Advent Children was kind of rough. Like, it came out in Japan, then was later released on DVD, but that wasn't the whole thing. And then they released the Blu-ray, and then that included some stuff, but it still wasn't everything. Like,
oh, complete, yeah.
Advent Children complete, yeah.
I remember actually when they had the Japanese demo of 13. Oh, he got it. Oh, he got it. Yes, sir. I actually also got the exact same, what I'm sure Johnny's gonna find right now for you guys watching, is the Final Fantasy 13 playable demo that came with, or rather I should say it in reverse, but realistically, people at the time, people wanted that Final Fantasy 13 set for the demo itself. But it came with Advent Children complete with all of the deleted scenes or scenes that were not all there. And the funny part is, this is probably one of the only Japanese-owned pieces of media that I have that includes, that's so sick, that includes the English dub on a Japanese product. Like that's like really hard to come by. So
I gotta turn off my my fuzz here. Hang on.
Yeah, no.
Keep going.
The excitement had got Johnny to freaking actually get. There you go. Look at that. All in all of its glory. Yep.
Yeah.
That is so sick.
So I had no interest in Final Fantasy 13, and the demo disc is all in Japanese.
Mhm.
Text is in Japanese, VO's in Japanese, everything. But I got it anyway.
Yeah. I was with you on that. I was, and this was like during an exciting time. This is like kind of like a little side tangent, but this was when importing stuff was actually fun and meaningful.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And
Like
hard.
Yeah.
Finding certain things was difficult.
Yeah. Luckily, there were certain, websites that definitely made it somewhat easier. But
Yeah, I mean, PlayAsia, JapanVideoGame.com.
yeah, put them out there.
Starland sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah. So
Anyway.
So yeah, bringing it back though, like now we have this new universe to really kind of second guess a lot of things, because when you look back at the source material, you have to wonder, like, dude, is this intentional, or like were these like,
right?
So,
it also makes me wonder, like, I don't know, like, games get greenlit years in advance, generally like a couple years before they're even announced.
Right.
But was Crisis Core Reunion part of Final Fantasy VII Remakes, that, the trilogy, whatever, like, was that part of it from the start? They plan on doing that from the start. And if so, then I think a lot of the story is going to tie together. Rather, because like a lot of the times when you're playing Crisis Core, because there's so many characters like Hollander, Cisne, Lazard, like there's so many characters that are just like throwaway, and like even as you're playing it, you're like, you're fucking meaningless. Like we know how this game is. We know how the game's gonna end. It's a cool story. It's a great story, but ultimately, like the more characters you introduce, the less they matter.
That's
so
true. Yeah.
I'm wondering how they're going to handle that in Rebirth and whatever Part 3 is.
Yeah.
A remake.
Yeah, and so, like, kind of going along with this, like, how do certain, pieces of the original story, like, play into the remake? Like, the one thing that, and this is part of the reason why I, like, I hit myself over, is that, obviously because I didn't play Crisis Core, I didn't catch this on when I played Remake. However, and this really ties into, like, what we're trying to allude here, is that the VR missions are brought into Remake that were specifically used. They were Shinra VR tech, right?
Yeah.
And so that was something that was introduced and pulled from Crisis Core.
Yes. Same headset, more or less. It gets updated, but
yeah, well, of course
Yeah.
it gets like, the refreshing treatment because, naturally. But like when you have the glasses that Johnny's wearing, right? When he's played all these original games, like through and through. Like I'm still missing lots of the actual original 7 and all of Crisis Core, minus now that I'm watching these cutscenes. Had I played Crisis Core and I've seen this tech, and then the remake comes out in 2020, and I saw the same VR pieces of equipment, I would have freaked out, and I would have called you. I'd be like, dude, I would have literally just went straight to you. I would have been like, bro, they're gonna bring in Crisis Core. They have to, because I'm very good with picking out little bits of detail like that come into play. Because remember, they first reported that Final Fantasy VII was going to be like a 3-part series, right? Like the remakes. Well, this was before we even knew about like Rebirth having its title as Rebirth, and then the 3rd part happening after that.
Well, no, I think they confirmed the trilogy when they announced Rebirth.
Yeah. Well, so that's what I'm saying. Like before Remake even came out, I remember that there was like, it must have been like a rumor then, give or take.
Yeah, it was always going to be multiple parts, but the rumor was like, is it going to be 3? Is it going to be 7? Like,
oh, right,
like,
yeah.
How much is it going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing was that I guess they went out of their way to, I guess, either, and this is the kind of fuzzy part that I don't remember verbatim, but when they revealed more of, bits and pieces of this news, they basically were saying how they weren't going to do certain things like Advent Children and stuff like that. Like those things were not going to get adapted. And you see, even though they say that, I don't believe it. Exactly. I don't buy it, right? I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. Did they ever outright say that I had to look up the name. The name is like Compilation Final Fantasy VII. That's like the stuff that came after the base game, like Advent Children, Crisis Core, all that. I don't know if they ever outright said they wouldn't do it. I don't remember that. You could be right though. I just don't remember.
Yeah.
Because recently they've been Square has been releasing sort of like developer blogs for each chapter of the game of Remake. And when they're discussing the final chapter, they say that the Whisper bosses, the 3 of them, are they confirm that it's the Sephiroth remnant clone things from Advent Children. It's Laz, Yormu, and something. And Kadaj. Like, they confirm it. They say it. So, like, I think they definitely played coy with news early on for Remake.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're just like, they're going for it.
And exactly it. And that's exactly it. Because, it's fine at first if, you're in charge of one of the most globally known and loved series and IPs, right? It's okay at first. Everyone gets one. And what I mean by everyone gets one in this case, everyone gets one to make a certain call and possibly a mistake on a decision, right? And in this case, it's like, all right, we're gonna just give you guys the remake and that's it. Call it a day. I know you all been waiting like 20 years or whatever, but we're just, we're gonna meet the expectation. But then something happened, and they realized that this could be one of their biggest like money-making moments.
Oh yeah.
In their history. And so whenever they had this epiphany, I'm glad that they did, because they must have realized that not only is this just potential, it would be a waste if they didn't go above and beyond and blow expectations out of the water and then include what is known, surprise us with a lot of certain things, and then really give us these twists to make it turn into whatever they're trying to turn all this into in the first place. So I'm definitely, and that's the thing. with Crisis Core now. We're here to talk about Crisis Core. Like, at first, I don't think anybody was really expecting them to do what they're doing. Because originally, I had thought, like, I'm like, man, like, look how, like, I just look at the reception and how well Remake did. I'm like, dude, this is their test, their proving grounds to just show that it has a place, man. Like, nowadays, like, we've been waiting for so many years, and now that it's finally here, and they're gonna basically give us as much of a journey to just really just soak it all in. So by the time whatever the final project of 7 is, we're not gonna get another freaking remaster remake for another like 50 years.
Yeah. Hopefully it closes the lid.
Yeah.
I did want to correct myself. So the remnants of Sephiroth were Kadaj, Laws, and Yazoo. I don't know where I got Yormi from. But yeah, so the developers of 7 Remake confirmed that the Whispers that you fight before the Harbinger were them. So they're definitely like in the live stream somewhere. Something's going on.
Yeah.
So, whoa. What I wanted to talk about was, so in 7 Remake, we hope it's open world, right? Like, they've alluded to it in some news. Like, they've talked about the field.
Right.
But they haven't outright said it's open world or however that's going to work.
They gotta keep us on our toes.
I feel like it has to be. It has to be.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if they put that on rails, I feel like it's going to suffer. But something that I'm very interested in is that Benora, this village that's so pivotal to Crisis Core, never appears in 7. It's never spoken about, never mentioned, doesn't appear anywhere on the map. Gongaga does, which is where Zack is from, but not Benora. They also don't really talk about where it might be. Like, they don't give you, a hint as to where it is on the map. They do the same thing with another town. We'll talk about it next time. Rodeoheim, is it?
Yeah, I think you pronounced it right. I like just heard it too on the when I was watching the watch through.
Modeoheim.
Okay.
So
off of my letter.
It's like another town. They don't talk about another region. They don't talk about it. So, like, are they going to implement that stuff into Rebirth or into the world of Final Fantasy VII Remake? Will it show up? Because, I mean, it's one thing to blow up a village, but, like, a village doesn't suddenly just go away after 7 years. Although, and I'm just thinking about this now, we know from base 7 that Shinra rebuilt Nibelheim. They rebuilt Nibelheim. Sephiroth burns it to the ground, and Shinra just covers up the story, and rebuilds the town exactly how it appeared.
Yeah.
So, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe that happens. I don't know. And then the other thing that I'm wondering is, with Project G, which we learn the name of later on, we'll talk about that in episode 2. Will those stories somehow find their way into Remake? I think I can think of somewhere that they do it.
Yeah.
I can think of 2 places. Either they do it when I guess three places. First, either in the flashback in Calm, Sephiroth maybe talks about it, because at the point of the story in Crisis Core, when they do go to Nibelheim, this has sort of been discovered and talked about, and then Sephiroth learns about himself, but he knows about Project G at that point. So maybe they just throw it in there. Sephiroth talks about it with Cloud, maybe. Who knows? Or when you go back to Nibelheim in present day, or whatever the remake present day is, after Cosmo Canyon, which is going to look fucking fantastic. I know it is. That planetarium, bro, I cannot wait. So either there or in the Icicle Village, which is where you learn about Professor Gast and Ilfana, I think is her name, who are the parents of Aerith.
Yes.
Yeah. Ilfana. So it could be there. Like, maybe they add in more files, more VHS tapes to watch, something. But I am curious, like, if you had any ideas about where they might slot these stories in. What do you think?
It's hard to say for me, just because, like, I haven't cleared too much. Like, the last I remember from the original base Final Fantasy VII was like, I'm trying to train up Aerith before she goes. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Before she goes. We need the mop.
Oh no, before
He's got to go.
She's got to go. You know, unfortunately, not up to me, but yeah. I mean,
she slipped.
Yeah, right. But yeah, like I would imagine though, because like just going off of the slight insertions that wasn't confirmed of the what'd you call them, the 3 ghosts or remnants of from the Advent Children?
Yeah, the remnants. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like they gave us some Advent Children when no one was even gonna expect it, right? I would imagine it would be. I don't think. I really feel like they would have to insert the like Project G. Honestly, Genesis is gonna just pull up. No one's gonna know why.
You think so?
I just like the vibes that I'm getting just off of how they're rebuilding this whole world from what we knew and expanding upon it. I mean, like, for crying out loud, like after the ending of Remake, everyone's like, dude, is Zack alive? Like, what?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like certain things could definitely change for whatever story they're trying to tell here, or whatever there is that they're trying to do. So I mean, if for Genesis to himself to actually show back up again, that might be a little bit of a stretch. But I think that because of the nature of how this is all being built, I feel like at least a mention at some point. I don't know exactly where, but I trust that they would insert it at a point in the story, and you know, someone would have to know about it to then explain it to whoever else in the party at the time or whatever. So.
Yeah, I guess they could do it in a way where it's like, you know, like when Cloud meets Sephiroth and Nibelheim, he says like they've done this before. They did this with Project G. Like it could just be like a throwaway sort of Easter egg kind of line. I guess it could be that simple. What I was thinking though, and the reason I made the face is because I kind of forgot that Zack is alive. Yeah, I forgot about that for a minute. But maybe if somehow we end up playing as Zack for a little bit in Rebirth, maybe it ties in there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the other bit of teasing, and this, like, you have to think, right? Every game that they're giving us, every project is for a reason. There's intention behind it. They are prepping us for the things to come, right?
Yeah.
Remake's purpose was to basically we're finally here. It's happened.
Yeah.
After 20 years, we are here, back again once again, right?
We're here and we're not doing what you want us to do.
Right. But that's what's getting fans like us going crazy, because they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, this is way more than what we wanted and what we asked for. It's like this is like one of those. These are the best kind of gifts. It's the stuff you don't ask for.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very true.
So they give us the game, right? And then they give us all these twists and turns, and we're just like, what the hell is happening? And then next thing you know, they give us this bomb drop, Sephiroth boss battle that never happened when it did in the original, and then all these things, the remnants, and then Zack. As soon as I saw Zack, first off, I popped off, obviously, right? Secondly, I was like, we're playing as him in the next one, right? And this is before we knew about the Crisis Core remake, okay? So then, time goes on. All we can do is speculate, you know, rumors, talk about it, whatever. And then they give us the Yuffie DLC. I'm like, oh, they're getting us ready for more characters. That's how I interpreted that right there. Because the Yuffie DLC was not that long. It was like, you know, basically just a couple missions or whatever, hours. Right? They gave you more story, which is great, more lore. But the way I saw it was they were giving us a little bit more rope. They were like, here you go. Like, check this out. Like, you know, they're priming us. Like, you know, obviously the areas that we were in were clearly the same areas from the first part of Remake.
Yeah, it was Sector 7, Shinra HQ, just like different pieces of it.
But what did they introduce that was new? That was not in the remake. They had that the combat where it was the two of them doing those combos.
Yeah, the synergy moves. Yep. Very Chrono Trigger-esque.
Yo. And I'm like, oh, they're getting us ready for when we have more characters at our disposal to do all these crazy combinations, right? That's how I saw that.
Imagine if you ride Red 13.
You see what I mean? You see what I mean?
That your mount in the open world is Red 13.
Dude, the possibilities, right, are truly endless at this rate when you think about it. So, and again, right, before we knew about Crisis Core, here we are. They only announced this game and the rest of the lineage that's happening like earlier this year after Yuffie. And now I'm just like, bro, they are priming us. We're getting a whole game that is Zack. They want us, there's a reason. They want us to know his history. They want us to see what he saw and go through those experiences. Because REBIRTH, oh my God. Like,
you think he comes back to life?
I mean, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like,
oh, what if that's the twist, dude? It's not Aerith surviving, it's Zack surviving, but Aerith still dies.
ooh, see, I don't know. Like, that's, imagine if you have the choice. Imagine you get to choose. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. I was talking about this with we really gotta get back on topic, but this is just, I don't care. I was talking about this with a friend. What if they, like, Aerith is begging you to kill her at various points of Rebirth, and that like sort of changes how the game plays with or without her?
Right.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting way to, look at it. If that's what you're like, that's an idea, right? Like that could be a possibility, because why do we bring this up? I mean, why do I bring this up? Because one of the big things is, as a part of the history of Final Fantasy VII, that I wasn't a part of it, but I got to hear stories from a bunch of other fans. And back in the day, there was a rumor that it was believed that you could keep her alive.
Yeah, and there's evidence in the game,
right,
that it could happen.
Right.
She has lines past her death.
Yes. See, and I think that when they decided to finally go like gung ho, balls to the walls, like, we're just gonna literally, like, not just milk this, but we're just gonna make a whole farm, and we're just gonna do everything we possibly can under the sun to really just give these fans something that they're not even ready for. And it's all this bigger possibility that is keeping us, like, even talking about it on this first episode. This first episode is huge right now.
It's a banger.
It's exactly. So, either way, I like, back to my point originally was like the fact that we're now getting something extra that no one really saw coming, which in Crisis Core Reunion, like, it's intentional. Like, this is, and
it's not Crisis Core Remastered. It's Crisis Core Reunion.
There you go.
And not just because Square Enix loves coming up with ridiculous names.
Yeah, but listen, it all plays a part in this, this re-life type of situation that we're in, like remake, reunion, rebirth. I'm sure we're gonna get like resurgence, or like imagine if there's a remaster, like, at some point, like, all of these games are, I mean, none of them are technically remasters, but like, it's in the marketing on the trailer that I reacted to. It's more than a remake or more than a remaster.
And more than a remaster. Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, they're getting us ready. Zack is coming back.
So there's one other story thing that I want to talk about, but I think it's better to leave that as like a cliffhanger for this episode.
Fair.
So what I want to get into is the gameplay. Of this game. We don't have to spend too much time on it because, again, we are mostly playing these games for the story and seeing how it's going to work. But I think with 7 Remake, the developers did such a good job with like updating the combat and the gameplay, where it's a great mix of a modern action RPG mixed in with your turn-based style menuing,
Right.
and like how the game slows down to like basically a crawl. You can go through the menus, queue up attacks. It's a mix of both, and it's very good. They have said that they are updating the combat of Crisis Core, and it seems like it's matching a bit more with Remake, where it's a lot more actiony. And Crisis Core originally on PSP was an action game. However, there is a mechanic called the digital mind wave system. And this is basically a slot machine. If you watch any gameplay video of Crisis Core,
Right. In the
it's a
top
slot
left.
machine in the top left corner. It's just constantly, it's reels that are constantly rolling. And wherever it lands, it's like a slot machine. Wherever it lands, if it has some sort of combination or whatever, you'll get buffs, you'll get a limit break, sometimes you'll get a summon, sometimes you'll cast, big spells, but it's random.
Right.
When I tell you that I don't understand how I killed Genesis at the end of Crisis Core, I don't know. I have no idea. It just happened.
It just happened.
And like, I remember it feeling so dissatisfying. Like, just felt like, ugh. Like, I'm glad he's dead and I get to watch this cool cutscene. But like, I don't know how it happened. Like, I don't know what I did.
Right.
And there's kind of a lot of that throughout the game where like, you just don't feel in control. You're basically just like mashing square, using a potion, casting heal every once in a while, and then every few minutes you get a giant attack that kills all the enemies. Like I really, truly hope they haven't given a ton of detail on how it's been reworked, but I really hope they took that randomness out of it and maybe put summons in the menu, or limit breaks are more traditional where it's just you take a bunch of damage or you do certain things, you get it guaranteed. I really hope they take out that randomness. But as somebody who's never played it, I am curious, like, do you think you would care either way? Like, what are you hoping to see out of the combat changes?
That's a great question. So I mean, like when I remember talking to you about Crisis Core when I was trying to get myself ready for this, like forever ago, and you were just like, dude, don't even bother, just watch cutscenes.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I never recommend that either. Like, I always tell people, play the original.
Right.
I really think you can skip. I mean, it's impossible to kind of play these days unless you're using an emulator or you have a PSP with a UMD. Either way you're going to play it, I don't care.
Right.
But it's stuck on there, and it's like, is it worth the effort? I don't think so.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like if and that's the thing. They're clearly taking a lot of what was the best parts of all of these, Final Fantasy VII aspects, and then they're like making them better if need be. So I think the digital mind wave system, I know that it's not going to be like the same in the Reunion version, but I feel like if they at least made it so that it focused more on, I guess, just enhancing your combat that's already happening in real time. Like,
right.
Because the other thing is that we also have to understand that Reunion is not even like a quote unquote full game in comparison to Remake. And you can just tell by the price point. It's $50. And I feel like
I disagree.
You don't think it's gonna
game.
You don't think it's gonna matter?
No.
Okay. All right.
Well, there's definitely, we talked about this earlier. We'll get into this with episode 2. There's definitely filler in this game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a healthy amount of filler. So I guess I can see what you're saying. It's certainly not on the scale of Remake or even Final Fantasy VII. Like, it's
Right.
definitely it's a portable adventure game just being refreshed for a modern console. So yeah, I agree. I guess I agree. I
Yeah.
have to talk
So
myself out of it.
yeah. Yeah. No. So see, that's what I'm trying to say was that like in now that we're having like this remake, or they don't want to call it that, right? Because it's more than just that. It's like I think that taking that system that was already in the original and putting it into this game, I feel like could just almost, I guess you could say, enhance the experience or just help people just focus more on playing and enjoying rather than like having to worry too much about like making sure they had enough potions or enough materia or magic to, like all those resources that they normally would burn through. And with this system that seems to just, ultimately it's supposed to help you. I feel like that would be kind of like, as long like as long as it's within your favor, it doesn't buff you for whatever reason. Or I'm sorry, debuff, right? As long as it doesn't
Right.
debuff
Yeah, I
you,
don't think it ever did that.
yeah, then I think it's gonna be fine. As long as it doesn't get in the way, you know, as long as
Right.
it only gives me stacks, then sure, I don't really care. It's not gonna really bother me all that much.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, we'll see in a month. We'll see.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll release some more preview content explaining it. Okay, so we should wrap up here, and we'll wrap up on a bit of a cliffhanger. But like I said during the recap, where the story for now, for this episode of the podcast, where the story is ending in Crisis Core, Zack falls through a floor in Mako Reactor 5, wakes up in a church in the Sector 5 slums on a flower bed. But the first thing he does is he seems to dream of his mother or speak with his mother. And if you recall, in base Final Fantasy VII, as well as in Remake, Cloud does the exact same thing. He falls down from Mako Reactor 5, wakes up in the church in Sector 5 slums on the flower bed, and there's a cutscene in Remake with his mother. In base game, I think it's just a quick conversation. Yeah, I can't remember where that cutscene is. I know it exists, but it may not be there. Anyway, exact same thing. So, how do you think that's going to play out in Reunion? And I'll sort of talk about my theory, but I'll ask you that first.
Okay. So you want to answer these now or leave our answers for next week or next episode?
No, let's end on this. Let's answer it, and then we'll pick it up next week.
So personally, I think that the reason why they had basically identical moments, I think kind of roots back to how they have like that Mako energy, like you know how Zack said like, oh, like look in my eyes, like it's all Mako.
Yeah.
It's like a soldier special or whatever.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
Cloud essentially, has that too. So I think that there's something in the Mako that's keeping these guys on the
Must
same
be puppy chow.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's something in that for some reason it is essentially like it's like almost like linking them in some way where like and this Mako energy is it's like it's not really of this world. Like it's something very special. Like wouldn't you agree? Like it's like something that's very like out there, and it gives them some sort of like enhancing type of features in that sense.
Well, it's of their world.
No. Yeah, like I know that. I'm just like I'm just trying to point out that
it makes them superhuman for sure.
Right.
Like it is. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's the Captain America serum.
It's the super soldier. Yeah.
Super soldier serum. Yes, exactly.
Literally what it is, right? So I'm like terrible at explaining things, but at some point or within this, Mako, I feel like there's something within it that for anyone that I guess has it in their system, they may somehow be connected with one another. And that part just hasn't truly been like explored yet or like told. So that's why I think, and maybe it has like with that, it also has something to do with their like relationship, and like they were teammates at a point, and I mean it just so happened that Cloud went through the same thing, so you could almost say it was like, oh, is it a coincidence? I don't know. So those are my.
So I'm glad I asked you first because I'm not going to answer because you haven't seen the rest of Crisis Core.
All right.
You have not experienced past, let's call it Temple of the Ancients.
Yeah.
You're about to go to Temple of the Ancients in the base game. So you have not seen Zack in base 7.
No.
So I will not answer. But your answer is it's a very good answer. Like, I'll tell you, you're on the right track.
Okay.
So hopefully by next week, you know what I should do for next week? I should find a point in the cutscenes to tell you to stop watching.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm like right now. I still have it up. Let me see where am I at. I'm literally at.
You're at Modeheim.
Yeah, so I'm at the 2 hour and 20 minute mark, and I just saw they just had a fight. Let me just hold on. Let me mute this real quick. And I'm
You just
gonna.
got introduced to Cloud, I think.
It's literally. Oh yeah, it's Zack versus Genesis right here. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, we'll do that for next week. I'll find a point for you to stop, and then we'll just sort of pick this up again because I think the angle of you not knowing is very, very helpful.
Oh, okay. Well, this is interesting. I like this.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun now. All right. Bet.
All right, cool. So with episode 2, we'll continue to recap the story. We'll figure out a stopping point for Ryan here, and we'll do some more theory crafting and just more fun with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and then of course Crisis Core Reunion. So we'll be uploading these on Fridays. So follow us both on Twitter. I'm at SJCage. Although Twitter may die by the time episode 2 is ready.
Stay on YouTube, guys.
Yeah, just stay on YouTube. The Google overlords will take care of it.
Yes.
But yeah, I just want to thank you all so much for watching. And yeah, Ryan, feel free to sign off.
Oh yeah, definitely, guys. Make sure, as always, liking, sharing, subscribing, hitting us up. All the support links will be in the description as always. And make sure you guys are taking care of yourselves. May the power protect you. Keep it locked, loaded right here on our channels. Stay safe, stay clean, stay inside. We'll see you guys next time.